Well, I grew up in a small town in western New York, just south of Buffalo, so one of our favorite teams was the Buffalo Bills. And we were really used to big snowstorms, and air conditioning was the last thing on my mind when I was growing up. Locally there was a small private Catholic school. We went to high school, all boys school, so you had nothing to do but study. I knew I was going to be an engineer. During my early years, part-time job, I got a part-time job working for a farm tractor company and also did industrial work for Ford tractors. So I got to find out about cool things about hydraulics, engines, how they repair them, how they shouldn't be repairing them. And that was all in high school. Again, no air conditioning. And then afterwards, got an opportunity at a scholarship from GM to go, at that time it was GMI, now called Kettering, so it was a 5-year co-op school. The division that picked me up was Harrison. They were the lead air conditioning division and radiators. They did radiators and air conditioning, HVAC, everything but the compressor. Later on, Harrison merged with the Frigidaire division, and they became the, it was just called Harrison Division. So we were the premier supplier of automobile air conditioning and anything to do with heat transfer in the automobile industry. The first 5 years of my career was at Harrison Lockport, and Harrison also had a division in Buffalo, which was the low volume area, and so I learned a lot about tooling, production techniques, engineering design, quality, human factors. We went through the whole gamut: how to build an assembly line, how to test parts, how they design parts, how they do reliability, etc. It was a real weird time at that time because, unlike today, we had a draft going on back then. So you either got through school in 5 years or you became, you got a new employer, Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam didn't wait much. As soon as I graduated, he got me into the military anyway. When I got my engineering degree from GMI, I then spent my plus years in the service. Came back, was reassigned to the Philadelphia area. That's why I got involved with MACS and Simon Religion. And I went to school for my master's at Drexel. So I got my advanced degree at Drexel, MBA in marketing and advanced engineering. During that time, we did heat exchangers. In fact, the one that's Croydon Power Plant did that one. We put that one in there. And then I also worked with the dealerships in the Philadelphia area, the assembly plants in the Philadelphia area, which goes from Framingham down to Virginia. Went with the zone offices and worked with the training centers to basically develop and provide the training for the students back then. I was the guy that developed some of the AC training for those instructors back then. I presented the material to the instructors, what they could incorporate into their stick, their show, etc. Also worked with ACDelco instructors, and we did the aftermarket on ACDelco at the same time. I just had a couple of areas on those that they had. Corporate ran them in the 70s when I was doing that work. Back in the 90s, GM started spinning them off into independent companies, and they had the outside people do it. After I retired from Delphi, ACDelco picked me up to become the lead AC developer for training material for all the ACDelco instructors. So they used a company called Raytheon, and I was developing material to supply Raytheon with such things as new technologies, new diagnostics, and new methods of working the service area. I was employed with GM all the way up to GM or Delphi up to about 2001. Afterwards, when I worked with GM, ACDelco, etc., GM, because you were, quote, retiree, they contracted you back. So when I was working with GM from 2002 all the way up to 2018, I was a contract employee. It's separate, so as such, I could also work as long as there wasn't a conflict of interest with other companies at the same time. So I could do training for MACS, I could do training for other people, I could investigate when I worked with the military, work on their projects, I could work on heavy duty and agricultural material too, to figure out what's going on. Tooling, quite a few of the tools we developed were as a result of, okay, here's the problem you have in the field, here's what you think you're going to do, here's how we're going to propose you're going to do. So I'd work with Robin Air, SBX, etc., and other companies, Wacom, we'll work with them and say, here's the problem, we need a tool to do this, here's how I think you could do it, you and me and your engineers will develop a tool, and that's how we came up with leak detectors, gas analyzers, evacuation charge equipment, special repair tools, repair parts. When I was working with GM, we oftentimes had a problem where you'll never have to service this part. You'd have a major failure, and I can remember one that it would take us 10 hours to fix the part because you have to pull the whole car apart. And I said, we're out of warranty, we can't, why worry about it? And the guy says, because it's going to be an MPSS item, it's a safety item. So you're going to have to do thousands of cars. So at that point, I worked with the engineer and the supplier. We developed a method that was totally off the wall. Instead of pulling apart the whole case, you know, an HVAC is located, replacing the part, which was 8 hours plus the disassembly of the car, etc. We took the service approach to say what we're going to do is we're going to put a bandage on this thing that'll work. So it was a broken temperature valve, and what we did was we just drilled a hole in the case, put a sleeve with a lever on the thing, and it took about a half hour versus 10 hours. We validated. This is what one of the things that people don't understand. When you come up with a service fix for the OEMs, you have to validate it the same way they would do a normal production part. So fortunately for me at that time, I had a design staff and a supplier that we worked together to validate that thing, you know, 20,000 cycles, different temperatures, material specs, etc. So when we put this sleeve together and we use this particular procedure, we follow all the OEM safety and requirements. So that's how we came up, and that's just one of many of I call innovative repair ideas you have to come up with sometimes. You have to think out of the box. I got involved with MACS back in the late 80s. My manager for Harrison at the time was a good friend of Simon Olahujan, and he would put on a presentation MACS. At that point, MACS was very tied in with the OEMs. MACS had OEM presenters all the time, so my boss, Joe DeMarco, says, I put these on 2 years in a row. Why don't you go out there and put on a presentation, all the changes that GM has, what we're doing, listen to the service complaints, etc. As a young engineer, okay, we'll do this thing. At first, it was very, I wouldn't say stressful, but back then we had no computers. You had little slides or you had flimsies, and it took time to make these. You couldn't make corrections, and you're trying to figure out, how am I supposed to talk to an audience of 400 some people? I'm only in my 40s, and I was a little bit scared because I was just, well, these guys know a heck of a lot more than I do. The old guy says, don't worry, kid, you'll be all right. So I got up there in front of 400 some people. I did my first presentation, etc. Did that with ACDelco, etc. And after you do one or two of these things, you start becoming, besides proficient, you're very confident in what you're doing. 2 years later, we had the 134A change. We went there, and GM was the lead one. And there was another engineer from GM named John Elias, and we ended up with what was called dueling podiums at the MACS convention. What we had was, I was the service guy, and he was the corporate engineering head. Said, we're going to do this. I go, no, it doesn't quite work this way. Well attended, well liked, because we were bantering flexibly back and forth to say, this is how it's going to happen, here's how the tools are, here's what the shortfalls are, etc. So it worked out fine. Got to know Simon Olahujan, who was the MACS chairman at the time, and he had said, you know, we should have you run for the board. Great. So at that point, I ran for the board and got a seat on the board, and the rest was history. Ended up going up through the ranks and was chairman for 3 years straight, and things changed and he dropped out of it, but became a vice president, then a president, and it worked out quite well. Met some very sharp individuals. If you look at the OEM at that time, the OEMs and the aftermarket. So basically, back in the late 80s, early 90s, the OEMs were about the most, before GM Chrysler, were very helpful in providing all kinds of air conditioning information. In the 90s, things evolved into OEMs spun off their support division for HVAC. So you ended up with the Delphi division, and Ford had its division. And they were not as helpful into helping the MACS organization. So we lost a lot. Not to mention the market share for the three OEMs went down. And now you have to knock on the door and get the others to kick in, like the Toyotas, the Toyotas, Hondas, etc. I was chairman of the board for 3 years and 6 years on the board of directors until they changed the rule. And we had, during some of the conventions, we had some interesting events happen. The shuttle blew up during the issue. Our past chairman, Simon, passed away just prior to the thing. There were some issues on the thing. We had just come off of bad economy, so there was a couple other things that went wrong too. So MACS had its ups and downs. As far as projects, I had multiple projects. I did the afterblow, I did the ACR 2000, I worked on the gas identifier with Neutronics on how we were going to do it, because I worked with them because at first it was it R12 or 134A? Then we added the thing called AIR, which was a big issue that I worked with them on that one. Then we worked on the AC 2000 project where we pushed the recovery machines to the next generation, where everything was there with printers, with gas identifiers, etc. That ACR 2000 project was a game changer for the industry because we really incorporate a lot of new things into the thing. Worked on some other projects on design of components with GM, etc. Things like where we put sensors, how we did the charge ports, how we do leak detection, worked on dyes in the system, worked on electronic sniffers with SAE, etc. Prior to leaving, we took a completely new development approach on the air conditioning system on new cars, and we put a patent on that one there. We have everything you need. Everything as a service technician you need for diagnostics and repairs was in one area. Totally is a real game changer. That's how we have this thing done. And if you need to work on it, it's where you can get at it without pulling the car apart. That's where I left it beforehand. I had one engineer say, well, we could put it next to the HVAC unit. I go, do you know how hard it is to get this thing out of the HVAC unit? I said, no, we're keeping it under the hood. So all the diagnostics and all the components you need to make this system work in one spot. So that's where I left that patent and everything else. So they're still working on it. And it has a lot of new technologies and things that people even think about, but having a background in service and knowing how hard it is to diagnose, how hard it is to tear things apart, the reliability you're looking for, and the training of what technicians have, we incorporated a lot of that. Same thing would happen with the other one was with the AirSep splice. Having worked on many cars with lines where it took you hours to pull a line out and put another line in, and that's all it was a pinhole leak. So we came up with the splice, and I worked with Delco on that one, to say I could repair this car without taking the line out. Saves all kinds of grief. Use this on our training sessions, etc. Got new technologies right now for leak detection, working with Carbon to say, we can find leaks a lot cheaper. Current 1234YF is close to $6 an ounce. It takes you as a technician right now close to 6/10 of an hour to find a leak, because you got to recover, put a charge in the thing, find the leak, recover, work on the car, put a charge in the thing, possibly recover again because you're validating that you fixed the thing. So you're adding an extra 6/10 of an hour to customers' time. So we came up with a new way of doing the leak checking a lot faster and just as accurate, if not better. Majority of my cars were GM, but many of the what I call technologies go across the board. Everybody had cycling clutches. Everybody had TX feet. Everybody has computer control now. How they do it, how they route the thing, slightly different. Denso builds their evaporators slightly different than GM. But what you have to remember is this industry is dynamic. The engineer that worked for GM today might be working for Toyota tomorrow. Well, the Denso engineer will now be working for somebody else there, because the industry changes, people jump around. So all that technology is very fluid from an engineering technical standpoint. Bottom line is you got to make a good product, it's got to be responsible.